many positions at ABSA before becoming president. She's an award winner on all her violets, her standards, her minis, her semi-minis, and her chimeras. So today she's going to talk to us about her chimeras and how to propagate them from a leaf stalk. So Mary, thank you very much. We look forward to your program.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Irene. I greatly appreciate that. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Well, Summer had emailed me this morning saying that that there were questions about LED lighting. And my husband will be here for 30 minutes, so he can talk to you real quickly about LED lighting, and then we can get on with the Chimera program. How's that?
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is my husband, Bill Corondan.
Hello, Bill.
Hello.
Hello.
Here I am.
Good morning. So you're going to talk to us about LED lights this morning?
I'm sorry, I can barely hear you.
You're going to talk to us about LED lights?
Well, that's up to you. It's a big subject. There's a lot to it. Is everybody there that we're going to be talking to?
Yeah, today, but we're recording you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, we were going to record it, and I didn't hit record. Sorry.
Okay.
You don't want it? Okay.
Well, anyway, let me.
Recording in progress.
I'm bored. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of a background of what I found regarding LED lighting. I've been doing LED lighting for several years now, but when it came to flowers or plants, I wasn't really that experienced in it. But what you have to think about in lighting for the plants is that it's one of the essential ingredients in growing plants. In other words, the energy that comes from the light is very necessary, just like fertilizer and soil is for the plants. And so what some people don't realize is that the frequencies that are important to the plant are not visible frequencies. They're not typically the frequencies that we visualize. So the selection of the proper light for the plants is essential in giving it the proper frequencies and energy of those frequencies. Now, one thing that I think has been somewhat of a long-term position on African violets is that they don't need a lot of light. They're sort of prone to indirect lighting. Well, that's probably a little true, but I'm going to take a little exception to that, only because people got used to just how they grew, how fast they grew, and how they matured. What we have found out, and we have done numerous stations here on different lights, and I think Mary can tell you that the results are different for the different lights. And the reason is that some are closer to the plants and some are farther away. Some are different in the way they're structured. So what this is there's a lot of variables in selecting lighting for your plants. I did a presentation and I found that in one of these I found some information from one of the universities that said, you know, when you put the plant closer to the light, you actually get much faster growth or much more complete growth. And there's a lot of factors. There's the blooming factor and there's the, yes.
What are your
light cycle durations like? Like, are you doing like 6 hours? Your light cycle duration?
Oh,
like,
okay,
how
so-
long are you giving them light for 6
Yeah.
hours, 8 hours?
Yeah, let's talk about light cycle a little bit. Light cycle is a little bit of a misnomer because I've heard people say, oh, no, you're not supposed to have lights on for more than 6 hours a day or whatever the case may be. Well, I think from my perspective, that's wrong. And the reason that it's wrong is because it depends on how much energy you want to give to the plant. And the other thing is that you find is the distance from the light source to the plant. A lot of people say, oh, you put it too close to the plant and it will burn the leaves or whatever. I don't know. But all of that is somewhat not true. And the reason I say that is because we leave them on 12 hours a day. And these lights are fairly intense on the plants, but Mary grows plants that are award-winning plants almost every time. And part of it is and I take a lot of credit for it because I think it's the light. Sure, I don't know about that, but I think the point being is that it's the amount of energy that the plant needs. So different light sources are going to have different quantities of that energy for the plant, the particular frequencies that the plant wants. And so like fluorescent tubes, the old theories was, oh, fluorescent tubes are good for for growing plants. Well, perhaps they were, but the problem is that it's a 360-degree light source. And it doesn't provide a lot of direct lighting onto the plant. It's a dispersed lighting. So in order to get and whatever the quantity of those frequencies were that the plant really wants would depend on how long you would have the light on and how close you would have it to the plant. So where are we going with this? So your question about duration is directly related to how much energy you want to provide to that plant, how fast do you want the plants to grow, what kind of energy, what kind of light source do you have, how far are the plants from the light, and it's kind of a mixed bag. You need to try different things and see which gives you the better results for your particular configuration. Does that help a little?
That works for me. Yeah, I use LED too, so I agree with everything you said. Everything you said matches what I use LEDs too. So everything that you're saying matches what I'm seeing with mine as well.
Yes. So now the other question I get is, well, what kind of light source do we buy? Well, that's a mixed bag too, because different light sources have different components of these frequencies that the violets want or utilize the most. Typically though, and I'm going to say typically, we've been quite successful with Barina grow lights. And the reason I say that is they're easy to install, they're not very expensive, and we have 4 shelves, 1, 2, 3, 4 shelves of the Barina grow lights, and the plants are about 10 inches away from the light source.
For the standards.
And they're on 12 hours a day. So that will give you some idea as to, and this is a light source that's specifically designed to enhance the frequencies that the light wants, the infrared and the ultraviolet frequencies that the lights that the plant is looking for. That
Your light source, is it near, like, okay, the light source that your plants are using to get all of their energy, is that their only source of light, or is there also some natural light coming into that system?
no, there's virtually no natural light, and the reason is because the window that faces out is facing north.
Okay, that makes sense, because I have mine on a window seal, and so there is some natural lighting, I'm supplementing the amount of light they
Sure.
get. to my
And,
LED.
and that's fine. And you're gonna, yeah, sunlight is probably the best source of the frequencies that you can get. But it depends on also the intensity of the light and the duration of the light that the plant is seeing. Now, one thing we will tell you is that the more light that we have provided, the faster the plant grows. So I think in a sort of a historical thing, people just accepted having the plants near an indirect light source, and they didn't grow very fast. They were fine. But they liked the way they looked, and they didn't particularly care that they were going to a show or a sale. So anyway, but what we've found, or Mary has found, is that the plants grow hardy and they grow pretty fast.
Do you have your plants on a dimmer at all, or do you leave them full strength, the lights?
Well, there's no such thing as dimmers. No, so we don't dim anything. I don't recommend that, because that when you dim a light, well, most of these light sources are not dimmable anyway. But even if you could dim it, what you would find is that it would not be a linear dimming. In other words, you would not dim you would dim the visual light, but you'd probably dim the frequencies that the plant is looking for more than the visible light. So you have to remember the energies that the plant is looking for is not in the visible spectrum. So a lot of misleading light sources say, they want different frequencies. Like some people say, oh, you got to buy 5,000 Kelvin, or you got to buy 6,500 Kelvin. Well, that's all well and good, but no, that's not the total story. You need to look at the total spectrum that's being emitted from that source to qualify it for a particular light or for the particular plant that you're trying to grow. That's why I sort of vector towards these the Barina ones. They're so nice the way they mount and the way they implement on a growing shelf. So I highly recommend them. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that they show on their website is they show the micromoles. It's called micromoles. It's called the micro symbol, MOL, micromoles per square meter. Okay, and it's the amount of energy in those frequencies, in the frequency bands that the plant is looking for. And if you look at the micromoles of energy, they will actually show you a chart from the light source and how much those micromoles of energy deplete within inches away from the light source. So, and a lot of light sources don't show you that, and that's what's kind of important to know, that you're providing and not worrying about the plant being too close to the light, because that's not what we find as an issue. Because the lights are not hot. They're not hot light sources. They're fairly cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I don't know if I give you a whole lot of information, but it's a variable. I mean, you need to practice. You need to try different light sources. Some people like to do a replacement tube, like a fluorescent tube, in their fluorescent fixtures. There are some light sources out there that are specifically designed for the 4-foot fluorescent or 2-foot fluorescent light fixtures. But typically they're going to be called full spectrum lights. And that's what you would vector towards, something that would be specifically called full spectrum. Typically those have much more energy in those infrared and ultraviolet areas than just a visual light source, because they don't, the manufacturers don't particularly care about the emissions in those frequency bands for a visual light. So you got to sort of balance out when you got just a visual light, whether you're providing the proper energy for the plants.
I hear you. Thank you.
Huh?
I said, I hear you, thank you.
Okay,
Have you measured the light, with the light meter, what your light is under the LED?
we did. Initially, we did. I did. And I found that I don't know how accurate that measurement is. Because to get a proper light meter, you're talking quite a bit of money. And to do it right. You're talking somewhere in the $800 range, to do the proper measurement of those frequencies that we're particularly concerned about when we're measuring a light source. So just a light meter, like you can put an app on your phone and stuff, that's not really giving you the whole story. That's mostly giving you what visual light that instrument can measure and adjust to. Does that make sense? Yeah, full spectrum light meter is fairly expensive. So I didn't do that, but that's why I vectored towards the profiles that the manufacturers provide as far as the micromoles of energy. In one of my presentations I think I showed in one of the slides micromoles of energy for 3 different plants. And you will see the ones that had the higher micromoles of energy applied to them grew much more vibrant and much better than the ones that were further away. So, and that's a rule of thumb. I mean, you can use from that report I generated, you can look at the micromoles of energy that is predicted from these light sources and apply that to your plants. It's a little bit of a science project, really. I mean, there's no specific guidelines, and I've read different people's approaches on things, and I would challenge a lot of them, because a lot of it is just a personal experience, what you achieve from your particular environment, your particular and the particular soils that you use, the particular fertilizers that you put in it. All that stuff has in the water you use. I think all that has an effect. And light source is just another energy source that the plant needs. All right, goodbye.
You have a very well balanced system.
Huh?
It sounds like your system is very well balanced.
Oh yeah. We have to use sunglasses.
Well, thank you very much, Bill.
Okay.
Sorry, we have a dog, obviously, too. So he may interrupt occasionally. So, and to just continue with a couple of more things you would want to know from a violet grower's perspective, my minis and semis are about 6 to 8 inches from the top of the plant to the bottom of the tube, whereas my standards are more like 10 inches to 12 inches from the top of the plant to the bottom of the tube. So when you're looking for those Barrina light fixtures, and they do have them on Amazon, that's spelled BARRINA. You'll all of mine are 4,000 to 5,000 K.
And then, you want to look for a high CRI is what it's called. That's a color rendering index, CRI. So you want to look for a CRI that is not, okay, that is 95 or higher. And
That's visual, but that's.
Yeah.
The plants look good.
okay, Bill's saying that's to make the plants look good. It doesn't really help them to grow that much. But I also sent Summer Bill's PowerPoint presentation that he did at Lone Star in 2021. And some of the products there are outdated now, but it gives you a good general overview. So that's a whole nother program. But, any other questions from a violet growing standpoint that any of you have? Okay. All right. If not, then we'll go on to chimeras, propagating chimeras. And okay, now can you see the propagating chimera screen there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great.
Did you mention the wattage that you use?
The watering system, is that what you said?
The wattage for your,
Oh, wattage of 4,000 to 5,000 K is what are on my stands. I have 4,000 K to 5,000 K. Okay, so this is Moz King Carnival that I showed at the 2016 convention in Albuquerque. And it was a nice sized plant. I had that plant up until about 2 months ago, when all of a sudden it decided to go solid purple on me. I've had it that long, since 2015, really. 9 years, and then all of a sudden it started going solid purple, which I've had a few chimeras do that. Moss King Carnival is one of them, and also Nest Cranberry Swirl. I've had trouble with, although they say that's not really a chimera, it looks like a chimera to me, but it went solid. It's red and white blossom. It went solid red. So I've had Nest Cranberry Swirl do that to me enough times where I don't grow it anymore, unfortunately. And this is the Alps that I also showed at that convention. Most people were taken aback at the size of the Alps. And when you see Ken Musilewski on his eBay page selling the Alps, that's the larger growing variety, that's because he got it from me. So that's where he got his start. And so the definition of a chimera, first of all, is that a chimera blossom has stripes that radiate from the center, or it's a pinwheel. And you can see that here in the Moss King Carnival, it's like a white stripe that's on the petal. But on the Alps, it's actually the light lavender blue that is the stripe that's on the petal. So you can have, it doesn't matter if it's dark or light, it can be either way. And the problem with propagating them is they often don't bloom true. So to propagate them, you need to do one of two things. You can either cut out the crown of the plant, which is what has been done here, or you can actually root the bloom stalk, the peduncle, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. When you cut out the crown of the plant, be sure you cut out at least, I make sure I cut out like around 6 to 7 leaves, somewhere in there. I cut it out, and you can root that. When I put the crown down to root it, I'll put it in a soil mixture and then a layer of vermiculite on top, and I'll cover it, and I usually pen it down with a plastic toothpicks or little cocktail toothpicks, so that it makes contact with that layer of vermiculite that's on the top. And I cover it either with an upside down Ziploc bag or
the full top sandwich bags, they're even less expensive, or put it in a terrarium environment. And then leave it there for that crown for about 3 weeks. And by then I can usually feel of it and feel if it's anchored, if there's a good root system going there, and then I'll uncover it and let it go after that 3 to 4 week period. Now, what will begin to happen is it'll start to form little suckers by the main stem of the plant here where it adjoins into the petioles. So this is the very first sucker that came up. You notice I left some leaves on the plant just for some nourishment to get those little suckers started. This is probably the fastest way, but of course you run your plant doing it, so, but you get a whole lot more. Now this is after it has formed all of those suckers, and actually there are 7 suckers all together that have formed here. You notice I've let them get a pretty good size. I don't put down suckers when they're little tiny. I like for them, you know, when I'm doing this to be the size of a nickel or so that I get a good healthy sucker to put down. It seems to make a difference, and each sucker will have quite a few leaves on it. Now you can take these off and let it sucker again if you want to, you know, as long as you have some foliage there on the outside, you can do that as well. So here are the suckers that I removed from the plant. Again, you can see that it's not just 4 leaves. They have quite a few more leaves on there. And it has a nice little base stem here. You can do that, take them off. Your favorite method, whatever that is, whether it be a knife or a sucker plucker or nut picks or whatever it is that you use to remove the suckers from your plant. And then you can just pot up those suckers just as you would normally do. You can see the little teepee with toothpicks I have right here. That's how I do a little teepee with kind of cross at the top to anchor the suckers down. These are just planted in regular soil mix. Sometimes I'll put a layer of vermiculite on the top just to kind of get those roots started, and then they start in the vermiculite and then they hit the soil and it's like they really take off. Again, these suckers are left domed or in a terrarium environment for a few weeks. I do wick water, do use wicks in my plants, and that's just green acrylic yarn that I use. It's dampened before and it's wet before I put it in the cup, and I use moist soil when I pot up my plants. Now, another way to do to get new plants, little plantlets without ruining your mother plant is from the bloom stalk propagation. So you can see here that this is the peduncle. It has the bract still in place. Now, some plants don't have these leaves. I don't think you can get plants from a peduncle like this if it doesn't have the bract there. You've got to have these leaves here because that's actually where the little plantlet forms, is right in here. And I'll show you that in a moment. So I've had really good luck with leaving this peduncle on the plant and letting it grow right there. Just remove the blossoms and the pedicel and everything and just leave that peduncle there with the bract in place and let it grow. Now, I've had times when this has dropped down in between the leaves, and I've actually taken a plastic fork and propped it up so that it would get some light and not touch the soil, because if it touches the soil, it might rot. But you know, violets have this really innate sense of I'm going to survive no matter what. So even from this little peduncle, then you can get a little plantlet. Now, when I do this, I'm only gonna leave maybe a couple of these on a plant. Like one person was like, well, I have 5 of them on this plant and it's not doing anything. It's just sitting there. And I'm like, no, you can't leave that many. I mean, you're asking the plant to do way too much work, I think, at that point. So, just a couple of them on there. And then just let it grow. And what will happen is it'll actually create a little basket on the very end of that peduncle, and it'll come out right here where the bract joins in to what's left of the pedicels there. It's like a little sucker will form right here. And then I left that grow again until it's, about 6 or 7 leaves or whatever, until it gets larger. And you can see the size of the penny, so you can see what size that is. So it's a pretty decent size, so it's done a really good job of growing, a little basket here right on the peduncle. So the other thing you can do is to remove the peduncle altogether from the plant, and then just cut off this one little section. So you have this left, just a little bit of the peduncle. Here's your bract intact, and then all of the pedicel and the blooms are cut off. So this is all that you have left. Now this is that when I cut off that basket off the plant, when I allowed it to grow. And then I chop off a little of that stem because I don't want to plant that whole stem there. There's no need in doing that. So I leave a little bit of a stem, a little bit of that peduncle there, or to put into my growing medium. And you can do one of two things. You can pot those up either in 50% perlite and 50% vermiculite, or you can use a porous potting mix. And again, it's going to go in a terrarium environment. These are just little deli containers that I've gotten from various places. So I think Nothing Bundt Cakes. I think this one's from Nothing Bundt Cakes, and you get a little buntlet. So you get 2 things: you get a delicious cake and you get a violet container. I was noticing when I was rereading some old notes that I had from different workshops the other day that Hortense recommended 2 parts perlite with 1 part vermiculite, and I had totally forgotten about her method of using 2 parts perlite with 1 part vermiculite. But if you have trouble rooting cuttings, I recommend that you use this kind of a mixture. If you have trouble with them rotting or something, because I don't hardly know anybody who can't root in 50% perlite and 50% vermiculite. It's pretty much foolproof. It stays moist, but there's plenty of aeration there. And then these are the baskets that I planted into the same terrarium kind of environment until they get roots. And again, I'll leave it covered for 3 to 4 weeks, and in 3 to 4 weeks, then they're usually rooted, and I can ease them out of that terrarium environment and put them in their own little solo cup. I usually use solo cups because I don't like to wash pots. That's why I hate it. And this is the bract, and you can also root that bract in water. If you're one of those people who like to root in water, I don't do that myself because to me it's another step. You've got to start it out here, okay, and then you've got to move it, over into this kind of container. I'd just rather leave it here and save a step in there. But if you like to water root leaves, this will work for your bract as well. Now this is the little potted up bract. You can see it there. It has some nice healthy algae growing on the perlite. And this gives you, this next view gives you a good picture of, this is actually what happens when that little sucker starts to form. It's really kind of a little sucker, really, or it forms in between the bract and that peduncle. And you can see there's just 3 tiny leaves on it right there. So that's the beginning of when everything's working the way that it should. There's the beginning of that little plantlet right there. Now, this kind of propagation takes a lot longer to get a good size little plantlet than the other. I think cutting out the crown is probably the fastest, in my opinion. And now you can see it's growing larger. There's a side view, and then there's the top view. You can see it better. Here's the little, now it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little leaves on the plant. And here is still the bract. See those tiny leaves that are intact. Now those bract leaves will eventually, they'll go away, because these leaves are going to provide a lot more nourishment, these larger leaves, for the plant than these. Just like on your violet, the lower leaves are always going to, they're always going to drop off and fall by the wayside, and the new leaves will come out of the center. So this particular one was rooted in the vermiculite perlite mixture. Okay, so that when you're choosing that little bract to put down, be sure that you have a bract that has good sized leaves on there. The bigger the leaves are on that bract, the more chance it is that it's going to survive and thrive. So what questions do any of you have about some of this method of propagation? Either one of these methods.
Does it matter the age of the bract? Like, can I wait for like the bloom cycle to almost be over and drop the flowers off? So I can enjoy
Good
it
question. Yeah, really good question. No, you're better off to do one with a thriving, bloom stalk there. Yes, and the blooms are just coming into play, live and vibrant. You don't want it to be a bloom stalk that's about ready to kick the bucket anyway, right? Yeah. Cutting out the crown of the plant, I think, the longer you grow violets, the more you realize how resilient they are, and the more you are likely to try daring feats like this.
Mary, I've got a question. When you cut the center out of your chimera plant to begin with, and you start getting suckers, have you found that the suckers nearest the center are the only ones that come true, or how far out can you go with those and still get suckers that come true?
Okay, they do really well coming true of, as long as they're at the base of a petiole and the bloom stalk. Some of the suckers that sometimes you'll have like a little piece of a petiole that's left on that main bloom stalk at the bottom. And sometimes suckers that come out down there from the bottom that are, it's really like a leaf with babies. You know what I'm saying? That's the residual of that little peduncle that was there. No, not peduncle, petiole. Yes, one of those P words, petiole. So it's really like, a leaf with a baby, because those are the ones that, to me, oftentimes do not come out true if they're at the base of the plant. Yeah, the ones that are closest up towards the center, every one of those on the Alps that I did bloom true, every one of them, all 7.
You
Yes.
mentioned that your chimera lost some of its kind of like color variation over time. How long did that take? And do you have any like anecdotal observations for like what might have happened? Like, was it a lack of genetic diversity? Did you clone the leaves too often and you just sort of lost the color in the process? Or they were just happened over time? It was the same plant, you didn't do anything other than it just kept blooming and eventually turned purple.
Yeah, the one that the Moss King Carnival that I had, like I said, I'd had it since probably for 9 years. for 9 years, and I'd only propagated it from cutting out the center. And when I cut out the center, I keep the center. Because to me, that's the one that's, there's a such thing as genetic drift after a while. And I think that after I'd had that plant for 9 years, even though I propagated out of center every time, it started blooming, solid purple. Now the Alps I've had the same amount of time, and it has not done that at all. So I think it's a lot on the variety that you're using. I had not had, although I've had, Eternal Orbit. Oh my goodness. I had a plant, Eternal Orbit. I think I took a picture of it, but I don't know. Anyway, Eternal Orbit and Rob's Inner Orbit, they're sports of one another. Well, it was labeled Eternal Orbit, and I know it came from my Eternal Orbit plant. And so what happened was half of the plant bloomed Eternal Orbit and the other half bloomed Rob's Inner Orbit. So that's one of those you could go to a sale and sell it for $25 because you could say, oh, this is extremely rare, which it is. It is extremely rare. But to a violet grower who's growing for show, it's like, garbage. So I kept it just to see, and I labeled it just to see if it's going to stay that way or if the whole thing's going to go Rob's Inner Orbit after a while. So Rob's Inner Orbit is a pink with a white edge, and Eternal Orbit is a Chimera.
That's cool. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Any questions for Mary?
For the lights.
Whoever wants to know how close to the lots do you keep your chimeras?
The Chimera is just the same as my regular plants. My standards are probably 10 inches, and then my minis and semis are 6 to 8 inches.
The blue stalks.
What about the bloom stalk?
The bloom stalks, well, with cuttings like that, I think you're always better off. The closer to the lights you can get them, the better. And also the warmer they are, the faster they root, just like your leaves and everything. People typically root their leaves and cuttings on the top shelf because it's warmer. And in Texas, it means they're a lot warmer.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more. This is still summer. Do you use any kiki paste or rooting hormone or anything?
I have never found that made a big difference for me. I typically don't have problems rooting cuttings or suckers or peduncles or anything. I don't have trouble rooting things. So I used rooting hormone for a while, but then I decided that's another step I really don't need to do because I don't have a problem with it. And then it was like, so you should let it dry, the cutting dry when you cut that leaf at an angle, let it dry for 20-30 minutes and then put it down. Well, then I decided, nah, that's a step I really don't need to do. I just cut it and put it down and it's fine. So I'm pretty lazy when it comes to stuff like that. And then when I went to convention one time, everybody was all, what is that called? Kiki grow, that purple gel looking paste stuff that you put on with a tiny toothpick. And I was told, oh, and you'll get bazillion babies. Well, yeah, you can get a bazillion babies, but how healthy are they? I mean, I only keep 3 babies off a leaf. That's it. The 3, one for me, one for a friend, and one for the sale. The rest go in the trash. I just have not ever found that the smaller ones ever catch up to the bigger ones. So I always save the 3 largest babies, and that's been my practice. And also, I still have a little room left on my shelves to grow plants. Babies can overtake your environment before you know what's happened,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else before we say goodbye?
This was great. Thank you so much. I learned a
Oh,
lot.
you're welcome. Well, I'm so glad you did. And thank you for the invitation. I've enjoyed presenting to all of you. You had some really good questions to ask.
Well, we thank you for coming and joining us.
All right. Thank you. Y'all have a great day. Happy growing.
Bye.
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 Mhm.